Hey, welcome to Aussie Online Growing on Shopify. This is episode 133. We're going to talk a little bit about Facebook and Instagram ads today, or meta ads. And I want to talk to you about one metric specifically that's one of my favorite metrics to check when I'm looking at analyzing the data inside my own ad account and my clients' ad accounts. And that metric is frequency. Don't know if you suspected maybe it was frequency, or if that's something that you also like to look at as a metric if you run your own ads, or even if you have an agency that runs your ads. Are you checking frequency? Do you like to look at the metric of frequency? I think it's a pretty common metric. I think it probably features highly for most media buyers when they look at ad accounts. Frequency definitely is something most media buyers would be checking pretty regularly. But if you run your own ads and maybe you don't feel terribly confident running your own ads, or you haven't been doing it very long, it may be a metric you rarely even consider, because other metrics tend to scream at you more as important, like cost per purchase or ROAS, and things like that. The ones that make you feel like you need to be paying a lot of attention to those, and the ones that I guess you see a lot of gurus talk about a lot, specifically ROAS, which is probably my most hated metric. I really don't like ROAS at all. I love cost per purchase. That's probably my favorite, cost per purchase or cost per result, which is the same thing depending on what your objective is. But cost per result would be my favorite metric. Frequency is up there in my top three, maybe my top five, definitely, maybe even my top three metrics. And I want to talk to you about it a little bit today and just share why why frequency is such an important metric. And I encourage you to go and look in your ad account and have a look at the last sort of window of time. Maybe look at a 14-day window, then look at a 7-day window, and then maybe look at the last 3 days and see what frequency tells you as a story about how well your ads are performing. Frequency just means the number of times on average that someone is seeing that particular ad served to them in their social media feed, and other things too, of course, with Messenger and Marketplace and all the other places that Meta is. So it's a measure of how often on average people are seeing that particular creative. And it's an average. So some people will be seeing it less than that, and some people will be seeing it more than that. But it's an important metric to pay attention to, especially when you pair it with a time frame, especially when you look at a window of time and then compare it to a different window of time, because that gives you a story of what's happening with that campaign. And it's one of the pieces that is important to use when you're deciding if a campaign is performing well or not performing well. Or especially with frequency, it gives you a great indication if the campaign is starting to fatigue, if it's starting to run out of steam, and it's probably starting to cost you more than it needs to, and it's on its way to burnout. So that's one of the reasons why I love frequency, and I use it as a bit of a measure to tell me if that audience is fatigued. In other words, the frequency could be so high that that audience has seen the ad so many times, the audience is sick of it, which they probably are. If the frequency is like 12, they would be well and truly sick of it. Or the other reason is if the frequency is changing over different windows of time, then maybe that creative is a bit worn out and needs to be swapped out, needs a new campaign started. Or maybe the audience is incorrect. Maybe the audience size is too small or too big, or maybe you're spending too much money. There's so many things that it can tell you when you pair it with the other metrics inside Meta. But if I'm just going to try and drill down to just frequency and tell you what I know about frequency and what I look at when inside my account and my clients' accounts for their ads with frequency, then let me tell you some things that I love about this particular metric. Like I said, it gives you insight into if a piece of creative is starting to wear out. And this may seem unimportant, but I would plead with you. I need to add this little snippet to every podcast episode I do for the rest of this year. I plead with you that creative is now more important than almost anything else inside Meta. Whether you are posting organically regularly or not, or running ads regularly or not, in the world that is social media and interest media, which I've heard it called, I think Gary Vee calls it that, it doesn't matter anymore about necessarily your followers or even your likes or comments or shares, But reach is important. The piece of creative you create, how far is it reaching? How many people are seeing it? And frequency plays into that, because if it's reaching a large group of people and the frequency stays pretty low, that's a great piece of content, because Meta is serving it out a lot of places. But if the reach is really low and the frequency gets really high, then Meta's like restricting that bit of content to a tiny group of people and just showing them the same thing over and over and over and over again, and they're going to get sick of it. So despite how much I'm telling I remind myself daily, I truly do this year, I remind myself daily the importance of spending time creating content this year, especially video content. I have oodles of images. I don't need more images for my business. I need a lot more video, because video in ads needs to be like more. We need more of it, lots more of it. I should be doubling what I am doing now with video, organically and in ads. So you need more variety of creative in your ads, so that you have the opportunity to use different creative to see how it lands with your audience. And frequency will give you an indication of how well it's performing. And also, obviously, as well, linked with the purchase, like how many sales you get from that creative. But when it comes to the audience size and frequency, is your audience too small? So is the frequency creeping up too high, which means your audiences may be small? If it's a retargeted audience, it should be small. Like, you want your retargeted audience to be small, and you want the frequency to creep up on a retargeted audience, but you don't want it over 10. You maybe don't even want it close to 10. It really does depend on your brand. But you can then swap that out for a new creative. You could then start a new campaign to those same group of people with new creative. That's why frequency is so important when it's paired with the creative, with video and with images, because frequency will tell you when your audience is just tired of seeing what you're serving them, and it gives you the clue that you need to be swapping it out for something new. And depending on your business and your budget and your audience size, which is related to your niche, that could be pretty often. So if you are posting a lot of organic content, it's going to give you some clues of what you could try for ads. It's going to give you a bank of content to go back to and try for ads as well. But if you're not even creating a lot of content, you're really going to fall, honestly, behind this year with Meta, for real. And I'm not even just saying that. I'm not a content creator. Like, I'm not good at it either. I'm starting to employ people and ask my customers help with, swaps for products and things, for helping me with that, because I'm not great at it. But I'm well aware that it's becoming the front line of how to succeed online in Australia with e-commerce this year. So with frequency, if you haven't got a lot of content built up, how are you going to swap these things out when your frequency builds up? Let me tell you as well about frequency when it relates to the audience objective or your campaign objective. So firstly, if you have a video views campaign running to an audience of 4 million people, then that will run for a long time. I have a video views campaign that has run for 2 months now, I think, to one of my audiences, and it never hovers above like 1.3 in frequency. It just sits there ticking over, because the audience is so big. But not just that the audience is big, the audience is big when it's compared with the objective of video views. When you look at an audience size on Meta, say it's 3 million, like one of the audiences I'm using is 3 million. For video views, lots of the people in that 3 million interest audience watch videos. Like, Meta can give that video to lots of people out of that 3 million, because it's a low commitment objective. It's cheap objective. Then there's lots of people that Meta can serve that video to. But if I then also start looking at bottom of funnel and use a purchase conversion objective to the same audience, frequency will be different. With the same video, I could use the same video that I used for video views, top of funnel, and I use the same video at the bottom of the funnel, but a purchase conversion objective. The frequency could creep up in a matter of days or weeks. What's the very next step for your small business in growing online here in Australia? Often things like email marketing or Facebook ads are things that small businesses come up against often that can be really costly to solve and really hard to find someone that you trust to look after those projects. I work with small online businesses here in Australia on those two very things. They dovetail together so well. They support each other so well. In my own e-commerce store in 2024, 36% of all of my revenue came directly from email marketing efforts. And my total revenue across the year was up 30% on 2023. So I am perfectly placed to support you in growing online with your very next steps. I've sort of been told I am the small budget or baby budget Facebook ad specialist, and I totally endorse that and embrace it. I love that title. If you want to work on Facebook ads, I can work with a small budget or a large budget. Or if you want to work on email marketing inside Klaviyo or another CRM, I can build flows and segments for you to ensure your deliverability remains strong, because no one wants to end up in a spam folder that stops us from sending emails. Reach out to me for a free discovery call. You can put it right in my calendar and we can talk for 25 minutes about your business and how I'm best placed to support you for a 30-day project window. You don't need to sign up to a long, expensive retainer. We can work together one-on-one just for a small period of time to begin with on a specific project to see how well we work together and see what results I can get you and your business next. Now back to the episode. Why is that? That's because out of the 3 million people on Meta that are interested in that specific topic, they're not all purchasers. They're not all shoppers. They're not all going to be shopping online, and Meta hasn't got data on all of them about if they're shoppers or not. So that's why the frequency will creep up, because the audience size looks the same on the surface, but when you pair it with the objective you are using, the audience is actually not the same size. There are not 3 million people in that same audience that are shopping online and shopping every day online to become part of Meta's purchase conversion group. There's just not, because not everybody online is shopping. So that's why frequency is important as well, and you need to look at it differently if you're looking at the top of the funnel compared to the bottom of the funnel. The same is true in the same way if you're looking at the top of the funnel versus middle of the funnel or retargeting. So when you're retargeting, you are also targeting a group of users who are purchase intent when the top of the funnel may not have been. So if you have top of the funnel campaigns running to feed your middle of funnel, which I do and most of my clients do as well, depending on what's happening, if Advantage Plus sales is working for them at the time or not working for them, then I swap out between this traditional campaign build versus Meta's new AI build. Let's say Meta's new AI build is just not performing well. Then you have top of the funnel campaigns running to build a warm audience to retarget with bottom of the funnel. Well, that retargeted audience is smaller because it's looking for users that have engaged with your brand and have maybe watched a video or visited your website. But it's also smaller because they're not all purchasers. So if your frequency is creeping up on one of your campaigns that you are retargeting users with, that tells you that either you're wasting money because you could be saving money on that campaign, the frequency is too high. It may also be telling you that you haven't got enough top of funnel campaigns running to kind of like chuck all of these users into the funnel for this remarketed campaign to serve. Because the top of the funnel campaigns might not be purchase conversion. They might be other objective as well. But those users and the ones who land on your website and in your Klaviyo list, they're going to be retargeted in your middle of funnel campaigns on Meta. But not all of those are purchase people. So that's why frequency tells you a good story as well. So if you look at the frequency of your middle of funnel from 30 days ago, say the frequency at 30 days ago was 2. And then you look at the frequency 14 days ago and the frequency was 4. Then you look at the frequency 7 days, or not ago, but in the last 7 days, and the frequency is 8. That tells you a clear story that audience is getting tired of that creative. You need to swap it out. It's also telling you potentially you're spending too much on that campaign. You could probably save some money. But it's also telling you haven't got enough users that are being found in that top of funnel. And if you haven't got enough users being found in that top of the funnel to feed this retargeted audience, so your top of the funnel ads should sit at a pretty low frequency. They shouldn't be creeping up to like a 3 or a 4. That's far too high for the top of the funnel, which tells you again, maybe swap out the creative. Like it's interesting to me and a bit of a learning curve this year to really understand and digest the fact that many of the metrics that you see inside Ad Manager have a direct correlation with the creative, because it's Meta is just moving that way as in general as a platform. I heard another podcaster call Meta, what did she call it? The creative testing platform, not the ads buying platform, the creative testing platform. And that just rung bells in my head. I've banked that little quote, and I think about that often, is that you will need to use creative in many different ways, like video, images, carousels, GIFs, graphics that are designed, and different types of content this year more than ever. And frequency can give you a really good story about a piece of creative and the audience you're serving it to and what's happening. That's a lot I've said about it. Let me check my notes I've got here, because I barely looked at them. Like, if you are spending $1 a day on a video views campaign to a cold audience, that'll run for years. It's not going to, the frequency is going to not get above 1 ever, probably, if your audience is a couple of million people. I mean, if you're targeting 10,000 people, that might be different. But that's also not going to give you a lot of good data either. Like, that's obviously not an ideal campaign to run. But if you're going to run a video views audience for $100 to the same size audience, then you can expect to see the frequency creep up over a period of time, and you've got money then to save as well in that, because you're probably not going to be spending $100 on a video views campaign. So audience size makes a difference. And if you're going to look at a tiny audience, don't be put off by using a tiny audience. Like, frequency is not a metric to be scared of, and to really like evaluate the whole campaign based on the one metric. Don't evaluate any campaign in Meta based on one metric. But frequency, don't get too worried when you see it creep up. No, don't get too worried if it creeps up to 7 or 8, as long as you're aware that's happening and you've got something to do about it. So if your campaign is at top of the funnel and it reaches an 8 frequency, there's something seriously wrong there. Your audience is probably too small. You could probably add in some different interests as well. Try a different audience. Go and try a different interest that's not so direct, but maybe might be slightly adjacent to the interest you've used, and see if that's a bigger audience. Save some money, because you're potentially spending a lot of money on that budget as well, and swap out the creative. So you need to do new creative. You need to do several. If you set up a campaign with multiple creatives, that gives Meta more options to serve different things to different users, which it loves to do this year, by the way. And if you haven't heard, Meta is loving to share its decided creative to the decided user. Even if you put it in a broad campaign, or an Advantage Plus shopping campaign, or Advantage Plus sales campaign, put lots of things in there. Let Meta work it out and decide where to spend that budget. Go back and analyze the results, or reach out to me. Let me analyze them for you, so that you can sort of identify what campaigns are sucking the budget unnecessarily, and what campaigns have promise, and what creative you could try with a different audience, or try retargeting, and sort of pull it out and get some scale going. But more creative, the better, and that will help your frequency as well. The only thing I will say about frequency is, if a campaign already reaches a really high threshold of frequency, sometimes it's cut too far gone to save. So you can try starting a new one with different creative would be better. Don't just put new videos or new images into the same campaign. I find that rarely works. Like 90% never works of putting new creative inside the same campaign. Sometimes it works, but I don't think it's worth, honestly, just think to start a new campaign and put some new creatives in it and let it start again from scratch. It has learnings inside the existing campaign, of course, but I do find sometimes once frequency kind of rolls along and gets out of control, it's like circling these same people constantly. It's like Meta gets stuck in this little loop when frequency creeps up, and it can't get out. So it just keeps circling and keeps circling. So even if you drop the budget, add more top of funnel in, add a new creative in, that same campaign may still creep up in frequency, because it's just like circling the drain. That's what I find sometimes happen with frequency. Again, important metric to know, because it tells you a story about the campaign. So to wrap up, let me say a couple of things. What's your audience size relative to your budget? Big budget and a small audience, then your frequency is going to creep up really quick. Try different audiences, try different different interests as well, or lookalikes even, to use that same creative, but try to find a new pocket of people, and that particularly top of funnel as well. Consider adding new creatives into your middle of funnel if middle of funnel is really creeping up in frequency. you really can't scale a middle of funnel. Like, try not to worry too much about scaling a middle of funnel. If your middle of funnel is getting great results, you can't just double the budget. You're just going to fatigue that group of people completely and potentially kill that campaign. You are far better off leaving that doing its thing and starting off a new top of funnel, broader campaign or an Advantage Plus shopping campaign to try and kind of reach out to new pockets of people on Meta with your great performing creative. And how do you know it's great performing if you're not posting lots organically? That's my punchline for everything this year. So frequency is how many people are seeing, how many times one person is seeing your ad on average. And it's a real diagnostic tool. It helps you really sort of know what's going on behind the surface metrics of like ROAS or cost per result. High frequency and poor performance means the creative is stale. If you've got a high frequency and poor performance, like I said, high frequency and a low reach, you really need to swap that creative out and do something different. A low frequency with high spend, you might not be reaching out to new people. So you might need to find some new people. Adjust your frequency expectations based on the stage of the funnel as well. And I will say before I go as well, that with frequency, when you look at objectives like purchase conversion, video views, viewed add to cart, viewed content, leads, engagement, what else is there? So what all the objectives that aren't Advantage Plus shopping. So anything not Advantage Plus shopping. The frequency you can kind of evaluate by the way I've been sharing with you today. But as soon as you add in something like the catalog, as soon as you start using your catalog to push in an Advantage Plus sales or Advantage Plus catalog ad, or you're building an Advantage Plus sales ad, anytime you're using Meta's new AI built, which is where we're all going, campaigns, or you're using your catalog and letting Meta use that, your frequency will be higher, and that's okay. So your usual frequency you can expect to see will hover around a 3 or 4. And that's because Meta's using it because it wants to serve the catalog to the same users, because that reminder and that frequent touch point encourages people to convert. So when the catalog, if you have the catalog linked in a campaign or you're using Advantage Plus sales, don't start freaking out if the frequency is over 3 or 4. That's probably okay if your results are still strong. Like, remember, this is not the only metric to look at, but if your results are still strong with your other metrics you're looking at and the frequency is creeped up on your Advantage Plus sales or Advantage Plus shopping, that's okay. I would still obviously be concerned if the frequency got up to like 8. That tells me, particularly again, like over a time frame, particularly over a window, if it started off at a 4, then it creeped up to a 6, then it creeped up to an 8, that would tell me that campaign is starting to burn out. I would just turn it off and start something new. So frequency just feels like my new favorite metric after this episode. I can't believe how many amazing things there are to say about frequency. And I do look at it every day. It's never a metric I look over. I never don't look at frequency. But I guess once I sat down to write out all the reasons why it's such an important metric, even I'm convincing myself how important this metric is. So if you run your own ads, please go look in your ads manager today and look at a different window of time. Look at the different campaign objective types. Remember, don't compare frequency to a video views campaign and frequency to a purchase conversion campaign, because the groups of people that Meta is targeting are different in those two campaigns. Even if you've selected the same audience, even if you're using the same creative, there's just not that many purchasers in the same size audience. Remember, when you ask for purchases, they're the users that Meta is going to look for. So they're going to be fewer of those people online than there are people that are just going to be watching a video. You want purchase intent traffic and purchase intent users. So when you're looking at frequency, just keep that in mind of what type of user you are evaluating this metric on. So if your video views frequency is 7, there's something that's way out of whack. You're spending too much. You need new creative. The audience is tiny. But if your purchase conversion is at 7, it's still pretty high. I wouldn't be rapt about that. I'd be wanting to do something about it. But if your other results are strong, then that's not a reason to turn that campaign off unless it's costing you money and you're not profitable anymore. That's probably everything I need to say for today. Thanks for hanging out with me. I hope you enjoyed this and it's given you the impetus to go look at your own frequency inside your ad account. I'd love to know how you go, and I hope this has been helpful to learn about a metric that's maybe not massively talked about, and let's dedicate a whole episode to it. As always, we are the CEOs and the captains of our ships, so keep learning.